gave up.
No, on pencil.
Oh, thank God. I was going, it's only term 1.
Yeah.
All right, now,
Oh.
are we ready? Okay, so this is a harder form than the form we've been teaching you. And the reason is that you probably haven't grasped the fact that essays are about ideas, not so much about parts. And the comparative essay is really about helping you make that jump from simply looking at essays as kind of like choose your own adventure parts to put together, and actually understand that it's a cohesive exploration of a central idea. Because you can't write this well without doing that. So you're used to what we've looked at before, the idea of an introduction, for instance, having a wider global statement, looking at ideas, issues, the text, the outside information, narrowing it down to what's important that you need people to have in their brain going into your essay, and then the thesis, which is your kind of statement of intent about what you're going to be doing. This is where people trying to write with more than one text get really hopelessly confused. Hands up if you're one of those people. Yeah, you try basically, hands up any of you try and basically stuff 2 introductions into 1 introduction. Come on, be honest, do you do that? I think you might. I bet you have. They're the ones who sit there and go, in such and Drover's Wife, they do it this way. But in this one, they do it this way. This one looks at this idea, and this one looks at this idea. So both of them using language features to convey ideas about society. Come on, be honest, have you done that? That's actually the hardest way you could possibly do that. And it means that you're pretty much obligated to write 2 essays within the space of 1 time. You've said that you're going to write 2 essays. That's too hard. Better still for you to look at what the questions are actually asking you. So the first of the options that you might get in a week's time is compare how text use language features to convey ideas about society. Now, if you're choosing the 2 drovers' wives, then their society has some similarities. They are both Australia. They are both patriarchal. Very like me to forget how to spell it first one. If you find that difficult, you could just simply say gendered roles. Gendered roles. They both have some issues to do with class. There's actually quite a lot that's quite similar between these 2 texts in terms of what's the society that they're looking up for. So what are some of the ideas that they come up with? Well, actually I might do it here. I'm going to try to find something cohesive between these texts so that I am not writing an essay that requires me exploring 2 different things. I don't want that. I don't have the time. And it will make it really clunky and it'll make it very difficult for me to be coherently communicating. Now, I'm going to think, what are some things that make it really, really easy for me to show differences as well as similarities? So they both look at Australia. One represents rural Australia. One has both rural and urban.
Which one's which?
Rural is the
Or, I
fun.
mean, like the driver's
Oh, okay. Drover's Wife 2, I should have told you that. It's Bale, and Drover's One's Life Lawson. One of them's a 19th century text, one's a 20th century text. So, okay, there's a little bit of difference there, but essentially in both cases, it suggests that a rural life is better, doesn't it? It suggests she runs off to the rural life, and I'm going, not a lot of difference there. In terms of class, yes, we have the rural class being presented as superior in one, and the dentist representing the urban middle class. Not so much. I think, though, gender roles. probably gives me a little bit more space. Specifically because this text refutes some of the things of this text. So I'm thinking I might use gender roles as my idea. Ideas about changing attitudes to gender in Australia. That's a really good thing because it's got the attitudes, the ideas. I've got something now that I can work with which is similar between the two texts. I'm not going to have to write 2 essays in one. This makes me very happy. So, how are we actually going to do this? Well, if we have a look at the 3 to 4 sentence model that we want to use, and we know we've got to look at construction, and we know we've got to compare them, I would suggest that here you suggest Australia has changed its ideas about gender between the 19th century and the 20th century. And this is reflected in the 2 versions of The Drover's Wife. Great. I'm already doing quite a lot from the question, which is very important to me. I've already suggested that there is a difference. I've suggested that there are ideas, and I've told you that the society is Australia. In fact, the only thing that I haven't addressed so far is language features. That's it. Give you a moment to catch up. It's also quite general at the moment. It's simply talking about a tendency in Australia that between the original one, where it was like, oh, suffer at home, be the good wife, protect the children, no matter how bad it gets, stay, to the 20th century where it's going, if it gets really bad, you're allowed to leave. It's quite a lot of change there, isn't there, in 100 years? Yes, Tori?
What does it say I've got ideas about?
Gender between 19th century, reflected in the 2 versions of The Drover's Wife. Okay, I'll give you a few more seconds to write that down. Yes? Yes, you may. Could you leave your phone on your desk? And maybe pull your mask up. Thank you. Alright, we are going to move on. Now, I really do want to bring a little bit about language features in, but I don't actually have to use the word language features. I can talk about the use of colloquial language. I can use the change in the descriptive language. I can use a lot of things that construct, using language, these different characters. Don't want to get into the situation though where I'm listing aspects from the text, because that belongs in the main body. So I might want to do something along the lines of the stoicism or the stoic endurance of her role, no matter how painful and unendingly difficult represented as honourable and respected by the reader, or the 19th century reader, in Henry Lawson's version. However, the construction of Hazel, or more specifically, husband, in Bale's 20th century version, indicates our society now allows women the agency to leave unhappy marriages. Now, there's a couple of words here. I'll read that to you again. The stoic endurance of her role, no matter how painful and unendingly difficult, is represented as honourable and respected by the 19th century reader in Henry Lawson's version. However, the construction of Hazel, or more specifically her husband, in Bale's 20th century version, indicate our society now allows women the agency to leave unhappy marriages. I want you to look at the word represented.
What's the one of the 19th century?
Readers. Construction. So twice I've used words that are signposting I'm looking at construction. I haven't used the word language features yet. There are still aspects where I could make mistakes. But what I've done is I've shown you that there are two different attitudes. There are two different representations of women's roles within marriage. One is to endure, one is to seek their own personal happiness. Quite different, same idea. Same thing, women within marriage. Same place they're looking at, different ideas about them. And I've used the transition word however. Click on whereas, however. I've kept it neat, I've kept it together. I'll give you a moment to catch up on that. Didn't quite catch the edge of that. Doesn't really matter. I'm hoping the people at home are following by what I'm saying. For them. It's not like you can read my handwriting anyway. I'll read that again to you. Would you like that? No? Yes? You want to never hear it again? Live without it forever? Hello. Oh, I'm so sorry, Shelby. The stoic endurance of her role, no matter how painful and unendingly difficult, is represented as honourable and respected by the 19th century readers in Henry Lawson's version. However, the construction of Hazel, or more specifically her husband in Bale's 20th century version, indicates our society now allows women the agency to leave unhappy marriages. Two separate ideas I've presented, because the texts have two separate ideas about marriages and unhappy marriages. Give it a couple of seconds to catch up, and then we've got to close it. I'll wait till all of your little pens are still, and then I'll know it's time. I'm going to have to cut this video quite a bit. Otherwise there's just lots of people just staring at me. I'll just drink a coffee. So once all your little pens are still, I'll know you're finished. anyone here have really neat writing that we could take a photograph at the end for the people who are in isolation? Oh, there's some beautiful handwriting right down here. Can you be a chopper chopping it for you? Cool. Take photos. It's my handwriting, let's face it, is completely useless for people to take notes from. It's true. Are we ready? Alright, focus up. Now, we've actually done all of the hard work, we just need to refocus it now. And we don't want to make it hard for ourselves. Our thesis can be really quite straightforward. A comparison through how the texts represent patriarchal gendered roles within marriage through the use of language features shows us how much our society has changed. Very simple. So we've established that the society has changed. We're establishing we're going to look at language features, and we've shown that the texts have two different ideas. Have a go writing your own thesis statement while I write one on the board. If you can't think of one, it's okay, you can wait, but here's an option for you. Okay. So this is one that I've come up with very quickly. Comparing the two text ideas about gendered roles within marriage and their representation through Bale and Lawson's use of language features demonstrate the fact that attitudes to gender have changed a great deal in 100 years. So again, I've managed to bring in the last thing that I hadn't directly addressed yet. What was the last thing that I hadn't directly addressed yet? Language features. Notice that I haven't listed a whole heap of things I'm going to do in my essay. Instead, I've created the idea that there is, well, I've created the idea, sorry, it's a bit rhetorical for me to do that. Repetitive, sorry. I've created a little bit of an idea that there's a conflict, that there's a disagreement, that there's a shift in our society. I've suggested that this is a societal critique that I'm essentially doing using two texts. So I've made it a lot deeper. I've made it a lot more meaningful. I've managed to address those higher levels on the marking key about engagement and about understanding of context. The ones that are difficult for you to get and stop you getting the higher B's and A's. I've managed to bring it in here. I've also made my life a lot easier. For the rest of the essay, until I get to the conclusion, all I actually have to do is say the role here in this paragraph. We're looking at her stoicism. We're looking at whether they use, repetition, imagery, colloquial language, descriptive language of certain forms, metaphor, figurative language. I'll be using some of those to show that, she's been put forward as this strong, brave woman we're supposed to respect despite her own lack of personal happiness. Do 1 or 2 paragraphs on that, and then do a whereas or however statement. Move over to the other text and talk about Bale's refuting that. Bale making us sympathise with her, show her she has agency, value that agency, shows how society values that agency. I might look at the type of language that he uses towards her that, you know, infantilises her, dehumanises her, exerts power over her through those language features, the features of the dentist's narration. And then come to my conclusion and look at the fact that while the audience was encouraged to feel that endurance was the most wonderful expression of femininity within marriage, Bale is suggesting that in actual fact happiness is. And that shows that our society values women as individuals a lot more. And I've allowed myself all that room by simply making sure my introduction worked. If you make an introduction work, you centre it around an idea, the rest of your essay is much easier. Now, of course, we wrote this on the run, it's pretty rough, but let's quickly just read through it. So, I've suggested that Australia has changed its ideas about gender between 19th and 20th century, reflected in the two versions of The Drover's Wife. The stoic endurance of her role, no matter how painful and unendingly difficult, is represented as honourable and respected by the 19th century readers in Henry Lawson's versions. However, the construction of Hazel, or more specifically her husband, in Bale's 20th century version indicates our society now allows women agency to leave unhappy marriages. Comparing the two texts about gendered roles within marriage and their representation through Bale and Lawson's use of language features demonstrates the fact our attitudes to gender have changed a great deal in 100 years. 3 stages, 3 sentences, I'm out of there. I now have a really easy essay to write, just 1 or 2 paragraphs on one, 1 or 2 paragraphs on the other, come to the end, say that we've changed. Easy marks, and I've demonstrated that I understand what the ideas are, I understand the context of them, I understand that readers' understanding of those ideas shifted with time. I've kept it focused only on one set of ideas, and I'm able to look at construction fairly easily.
Is that the question for
There's 3 questions, you don't know which one you're going to get. That's the first option.
so that question is it?
That's one of the options you have, that's why you should be writing this down. Alright, do I have any questions about that? Hands up, you just want a few minutes to just move your fingers around. Yeah? Now this is rough as guts, and I appreciate that. So, what I'm going to say is in your groups you have 10 minutes to make it sound better. The group that makes it sound the best will get Chuppa Chups. Hands up if you would like a Chuppa Chup. Hands up if you'd just like to go into your next lesson having an introduction so good that you know that if you wrote it in your in-class essay, you would get a great mark. Yeah, see, we're all motivated by something. I'm now going to give you, let's say 5 minutes in your group. I want you to try and improve that, make it work better. For a start, this isn't really an introductory sentence at all. Maybe put some commas in, maybe change some words over, look at some repetition. See who can fix up my introduction the best. Those who do will win. Any questions? All groups must come up with an improved introduction of some kind. All right, off you go.